Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. No matter where you're watching us from around the globe, I say thank you for allowing us into your homes, most importantly, into your hearts. If you're watching us on the DBNA television network, a sincere thank you and continue to support the network, the sponsors, and the other amazing talent here on the network. If you're listening to us in podcast form, my friend Kathy and I say turn that knob up. Let us put that flavor in your ear. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's time once again to lace them up for another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. And I am honored to have one of my Indiana buddies on the show with us today. Miss Kathy Jordan, 25 years with the Pacers organization. And, when you talk about a heart of gold and a person with servant leadership, there's no better epitome of that than the gal who's on our show. Miss Kathy Jordan, welcome to the show. And thanks so much for sharing your time with us today.
Well, thank you, Coach. And the check is in the mail. Thank you.
Oh man, I got to keep you coming back for more then. Kathy, how you doing? How's everything?
Hey, I am blessed. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. And
Yes,
we were catching up, and so again, I'm keeping everybody in prayer with you. But I hope you're doing well.
thank you. We're holding up. We're back in Salt Lake City, but it was great to spend a long weekend last weekend back in the good old state of Indiana, where you have truly impacted the state, the community of Indianapolis with an amazing job that you have done and pioneered. But not only for women, but for franchises with your services, and we'll talk about that. But Kathy, I'll tell you what, how fun is it to just reconnect and catch up?
Hey, it's fun. I follow you on social media, so I haven't been too far away. You might not hear my voice or see my face, but I've been following you. So yeah,
Thank
you've been
you.
an instrumental part of my life back with my son. So I really appreciate that still. Thank
I,
you.
I remember being out here with the Utah Eagles and him coming out
Yeah.
to see us. So, yeah,
Yeah.
talented young man, very talented
Well,
young man.
thank
You got
you.
to be proud.
Thank you. I was very proud and still very proud. Yes.
That's exactly right. So, Kathy, let's talk about it. You attend Purdue University. You were a cheerleader at Purdue University. How much did that experience being in sports and sports entertainment, did that kind of set you on your journey and your path to what you did for, a quarter century?
Well, I would say, honestly, my interest in sports has always been there since I was a young girl. But because of the time I was coming up, and there wasn't a lot for girls to do in sport, but I did compete with the boys growing up. So I've always
Come
had an
on, we know
interest.
you kicked their butts.
I did. I absolutely did. No, but
Uh,
I always enjoyed sports. And actually, when I went to Purdue, I majored in physical education because I wanted to be a coach and teach. I always had a passion for teaching also. So that together, those two passions combined, set me up very well for what I was doing in professional sports later on.
I love it because I mean, not only were you able to teach and serve, but man, to be a mentor and be, a head of a department, which we'll get into. I think it's just fascinating how you saw and had foresight and vision to be like, you know what, this is a need, and how you kind of started off in secret. But again, the story's amazing. And Kathy, you've got to get a book. You need to write a book because so many people would be like, "Oh my
Everybody's
gosh,
saying that.
what a story!"
Everybody's telling me to write a book, so I might acquiesce to that request and start working on it. And
And when
I
you
promise I
do that,
won't tell
we're
any
going to
secrets.
market it on this show for you.
Okay, I'll be back. Thank you. Yeah,
That's so
yeah.
cool. So, talk about those years at Purdue University. Uh, I mean, talk about the football team at that time, the basketball team at that time. Kind of talk about how it really not only helped grow your interest in sports, but again, you being athletic. I mean, gosh, what a path it put you on.
Well, when I went to Purdue, I was on the women's gymnastics team. So that's how I really kind of got involved in the sports culture there at Purdue. And then Title IX came along. There was no men's gymnastics team. So kind of the opposite. So the women's team folded, and I took my gymnastics passion, and I was a cheerleader in high school also. So tried out for cheerleading at Purdue. Eventually made that squad my junior year, and of course it engrossed me more into the sports culture. They used me sometimes as like an ambassador as they were recruiting, some of the high school athletes. So I got to be a part of that. And then, of course, I ended up dating one of the basketball players. and and
He had good taste. Let's give him credit.
well, thank you. I think so. I think so. But yes, and we ended up getting married after graduation, which kind of threw me into that professional. But seeing him and what they were going through, we had classes together. I had classes with some of the athletes, football players and basketball players, and I would see how they would get excused for stuff, and the cheerleaders never got excused for it. But I would kind of see some of the things that were going on and weren't there. And then as he went in and was drafted and went through that lifestyle, just a lot of things that I felt should have been there for them weren't there. We were, very young, 21 years old, coming out of school, and no one was showing us anything or teaching us anything. It was just kind of you learn as you went. And probably the big experience is when he went to Cleveland, and um, strange city, didn't know anyone. And when I went up there, he went first. And when I went to meet him, he was living in an empty apartment. I was like, where's the furniture? Well, he didn't know. No one had said, well, here's a good furniture place to go. Here's a good bank. So I kind of took up on my, when I got there and did those things. But later on, when I got the job with the Pacers, of course, we were no longer together for a lot of different reasons, like things that come along with that lifestyle. But that was one of the things that I remembered the most. And Vern Fleming was the first player that was drafted when I was there. He was married, had a young son, hadn't quite reached school age, but would be going to school in like 2 or 3 years. And so I just reached out to his wife and said, hey, I know what this is like. I've been in your shoes. Let me help you if you like. And so I kind of showed her around the city, talked about different neighborhoods, different schools, doctors, where she could get her hair done. So all of those different things that I thought would help her out that no one helped us out with. And that's kind of how it's got started.
Well, and when you think about that, you experienced it firsthand to go to a new city, not knowing, hey, where can I go get some groceries? Where's a good place that's going to be safe for me to,
Yeah,
if I want to go get a workout? Where can I put my children in school? Where can I go to get things and get settled into an apartment that had no furniture? So, I mean, you
right.
experienced it firsthand, so you knew and you had empathy in your heart, then you're like, okay, even though it's kind of in secret and it's done under the table, you reached out to them because you didn't want them to go through what you too had experienced being in
All
Cleveland.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I started there as promotions assistant. So it had absolutely nothing to do with the athletes. And at that time, the front office really did not commingle with the basketball side, especially the women, unless you were the PR director and were setting up media interviews or something with the players. So there was really no need for me to be around the players. So I did do it secretly. But Donnie Walsh was an assistant coach at the time. And 2 years later, he became general manager, called me in the office and said, hey, I know what you were doing. And I thought, okay, well, here's my walking papers. Like, I know
Here
all
comes
I
that
just
pink slip.
right. But he was like, no, that's not it at all. I just saw how much it helped the guys get established faster, and want you to keep doing that. And actually, he expanded it for me to work with their spouses, their family members. And then it just kind of evolved from the welcome wagon to just helping and other things as the guys got younger and we were getting them out of high school. More life skill things, and the teaching really came in at that point because we're looking at life skills education. Some guys trying to get them to go back to finish degrees. and just kind of connecting them with different things, and started talking and building those relationships more, trying to figure out what they needed, what they wanted, and what would help them.
Right, and I think it's fascinating that, obviously the players had been talking and said, "Hey, what an asset you were and how much help you were." And I'm sure for the players' wives and families, oh my goodness, I mean, what a gold mine they had hit when they come in once they were drafted or were a free agent there with the Pacers to have someone like you. But I want to go backpedal a little bit because again, there weren't a lot of opportunities for women in sports at that time. I mean, we talked about Title IX, while you was a college athlete, but talk about some of the challenges that were there for you being a female in the sports entertainment industry.
Well, I think it was interesting because George Irvin was the coach, and of course, I was around the same age as the players, so it's just maybe a little older than some of them because I had finished school, and some of them were coming right out of school. So I was around the same age, and Coach really was watching with a keen eye to make sure, that there was no hanky panky going on, which there wasn't. But that was just one of the stereotypes, why women were around sports because, you wanted to marry an athlete or something. And it's like, well, no, I'm not interested in that. Been there, done that. Really,
Yeah.
really don't want to do that again. But
Yeah. It's not like you were being a gold digger. You were
oh
actually just
no,
really trying to help.
yeah, I was trying to help, and didn't really think of it as really starting anything. Everybody's like, how did you have the foresight? And it really wasn't anything like that. It was just trying to help because I knew what it was like. So reaching out to the women, and then eventually turned into working more with the players, because a lot of the guys weren't married as time was coming on. At that time, it seems like a lot of the guys were married. Clark Kellogg or Williams, they were all married or engaged in committed relationships. So there was more spousal interaction. But as time went on, the guys were younger. They weren't graduating from college or had been 4 years in college. So I was getting young guys with no spouse. Maybe I was working with a mom or a dad, sister, brother, or something like that. So it just kind of evolved from once the coaches understood what I was doing, then it got better. That was always every time we got a new coach, I had to kind of start over again. It's like, okay, why is she here? Because I was around the locker room a lot. It's like, no, who is she and why is she here? But Donnie was very good at setting that up and made sure that I met the coaches, and they understood what my job was. And actually, he started having me meet the players. I was one of the first people that they would meet when they'd come in. And he'd have me sign co-sign on contracts and things like that. So he integrated me into the culture of the basketball side where it became normal.
Yeah.
So I always give him big props.
But again, it's fascinating that it evolved into what it turned into because not only were you basically building relationships and trying to help, I mean, it turns into a whole department. You mentioned Vern Fleming and him being one of the first athletes that, you kind of reached out to and again, secretly under the table was trying to
Mhm.
help and provide a support system for him. Take us through that experience and compare your experience to what he was going through and how you could kind of make that transition smoother for him just coming into Indianapolis.
Probably the biggest difference, though, is Vern was a first round draft pick. He was a high draft pick. So he came into a great organization. Um, so when he came in, it was more me learning what his background was. He was coming from New York. Um, Huge culture difference, New York City and Indianapolis, Indiana, especially in 1983. Uh, so I just kind of took all of that into account. And like I said, it wasn't in the forefront of my mind that I was doing anything special. I was just trying to be helpful. So his experience, that's why I reached out to his wife. Um, she came in, and while he was trying to acclimate to the team, she's just kind of left out there. So I just wanted to make sure, she had, and she was going to be the one, knowing that it's usually the wife that's kind of doing everything while the guys are doing. So I wanted to help her, so that she wouldn't be so frazzled, because she also was from New York, and just kind of, and with a small child. So again, it was like, oh, geez, let me help you out. Let me be a resource for you, and I'm here for whatever you need, whatever questions you have. It was a little different from my situation in that, my ex-husband went before me. I didn't go with him when he first went. So he was kind of led by the other players on the team. They all lived in the same apartment complex. It was like a big dorm or something. So, outside of the star player, they all lived together. So they were helping each other, which to me was kind of like the blind leading the blind, maybe. But I'm sure there were some guys that were more helpful than others. The veterans that have been around longer were more helpful to him. So I didn't get to see that side. All I got to see was when I came, what wasn't there, and try to fill in the blanks. So I tried to be that for Michelle when she and Vern first came. It's like, let me help you fill in the blanks while he's over here doing that. And that was the thing that stood out to Donnie, is like how quickly he acclimated. Um, and since I hadn't been there before, I really don't know how quick, because you had, like I said, Herb Williams, Kellogg, Butch Carter. I mean, there were great guys um, that were there. So I didn't really know what they had gone through, and had to go through. And I'm sure as veterans, they would have been very helpful to Vern. But that was one of the things that they said, is that, how quickly he was able to just kind of step right in and focus where they needed him to focus on basketball.
Right, because I mean, as you mentioned, the players come in, and of course, there's workouts, there's player development, there's team practices, there's video sessions. So a lot of their time is taken up being
Right,
around the team and team building and bonding, where the spouses who are left to pick up the pieces, as you were kind of in
right.
Cleveland, like, okay, well, where do I go to get these things? What are the safe part of town, and where
Mhm.
should I not be, and where can I go get things to, decorate the apartment or home, or help them find a home? So again, I could see, as a coach and a professional coach, how much of an asset you would be, because if that player is able to just focus on basketball and do his job efficiently, happy wife, happy life. You come in, you take care of the wife, and you're being that support system so she can get logistically acclimated, get more comfortable. Because again, think of the culture shock from, downtown New York City to,
Yeah,
small market, smaller city, Indianapolis, where, you don't have that hustle and bustle. And it's got to be like, oh my gosh, why am I here? Where are we at? And
yeah.
where do I go?
Right, right. And you hit the nail on the head. It's like happy life, happy life. And because at the beginning, I did spend more of my attention on the wife, getting them like, what do you want to do? Like, you just can't sit here twiddling your thumbs, because I did that. It's like, I don't know what to do with myself. Let me learn how to crochet or do something, because
You can only
you're
read so many books,
I
right?
right, right. So I remember Atari first. That was when Atari first. I'm aging myself. I'm aging
Come on, you were
myself
playing
now.
Pong. Come on.
I was. That's what I did when he was on the road. But I was like,
Wow.
I am so bored. So yeah, that was where my focus was a lot at the beginning, was what do you want to do? Let's get you involved in the community. Some of them had gone to, school. I think Herb's wife at the time had a PhD. So it's like, what do you want to do with that? So it's like just trying to get their life, give them a life, so that they just weren't sitting around.
Yeah, see, and
That
I
was
love
yeah.
that, because again, I can see the advantages to having a Kathy Jordan in the franchise, just because again, here you are, not even doing what your role was, but again, just trying to be a friend and build a
Yeah.
relationship and be a resource, because again, that's valuable. But let's talk about some of the people when you were hired in with the Pacers. Who were some of the front office people, and who were some of the staff that you got to know, but you would hear whispers or rumors or innuendos of, what is she doing, or, how can she help, or uh-oh, she's getting too close to the players. What did you get any of that kind of feeling or feedback from any of the front office people at that time, because they knew you were
No.
helping but didn't really get the idea?
No, at that time, no one knew I was helping. Um, when Donnie came in and it became official, it kind of turned in because he changed. I later became director of promotions a couple of years later, and then director of community relations. So it almost became a part of the community relations staff. So people knew that aspect of it. Okay, she was getting autographs, she was scheduling the players for appearances. So that's why she's talking to them. But they didn't know about the other. And actually through the 25 years, a lot of that was confidential. So really a lot of things I was doing only Donnie Walsh knew, and then later, not even the coaches knew. Um, Later, when Larry Bird came in as president of basketball, then he was privy to some of it, but it was confidential, and the players knew that they could tell me things, and Donnie never put me in a position to. He knew that I would let him know what he needed to know and take care of what he didn't need to know.
Yeah, what
So put
you
it
you
like that.
kept it
So yeah,
professional and you kept it up
yes,
front, and you were being a confidant for the families because there were things that they were going through, but yet I'm sure if you was privy to certain information or something had come back to you, you'd be like, "Hey, Donnie, you may want to be aware of this," and then that way you can surround them with better supports and again help them focus on just basketball, so that way the product on the court was going to be successful.
absolutely. Absolutely. But they knew that I would never even go to Donnie without their knowledge. I would always ask them if there was something I was real concerned about that I felt like he really need to know. We'd talk about it and I would share with them, we really need to share this with Donnie. You might want to talk to him about it. And, or if you want me to, I can open that door, however you want to handle it. But yes, um, that was, again, I always give Donnie big props because a lot of teams did not have that. They wanted, when the
Right.
position became one, Commissioner Stern is the one who decided every team needed to have this position later on. But some people were put in a position where I want you to babysit and I want you to tell me everything that they're doing. And that was not the case for me
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Well, and you think about it because, being a female, the stereotype or the generalization is, well, if there's a female in here, fraternizing with the players, well, then there's obviously going to be some other things that were going on because, that's what they said. Well, that's why the female reporters wanted to get into the locker room, this, that, and the other, which is all nonsense. And I'm so
Right,
glad we've got past that stigma and the pendulum has swung back to where it's like, you know what? These women are assets, and now you're seeing women on the benches and coaching
right,
roles, and
right.
so to me it's opened up so many doors to where we view women as professional assets for these franchises. And again, whether you realize it or not, and you're so humble you wouldn't say this, but you kind of pioneered and kicked that door wide open for a lot of females in the industry.
Well, some. I mean, there were a few women before me. There, Paula Hansen. I don't know how many people know that name, but Paula had been in the ABA and went into the NBA, and she was very high up in the structure, um, and the only woman. I think she was the first outside of Nancy Leonard, from the ABA, who's co-general
Bobby's
manager for the
Bobby, yeah.
yeah, yeah, Slick Leonard's
Boom,
wife.
baby.
Yeah, absolutely. You just didn't hear about many women. And there were some. There's always some hidden, the hidden figures. They're there, not always given the attention and the credit that they deserve. So I
Yeah.
don't want to say, I never say like I was the first. I mean, there's always someone who opens the door for you somewhere before you. So I think Paula Hansen was one of those people for me.
Well, and I love how Reggie Miller comes out and he says, "Yeah, Kathy Jordan, that's the real deal." Because when you think of, a face of a franchise who respected so much what you have done for the franchise, and you get that kind of, you know, get those kind of words from a superstar like that, it's got to make you feel good and know what you did mattered and you were impacting lives in a positive way.
Yeah, well, Reggie, everybody says Reggie's your favorite. And I says, well, I don't really have a favorite. Everybody has a special place in my heart because I've worked with so many guys over 25 years. But Reggie probably the longest because he had an 18-year career,
Right.
with one franchise. So I worked with him the whole 18 years. So we did get to be very close, and I got to work with him on a lot of different things along with his. I mean, he had a great agent and still work with his business manager and partner a lot. So He had a great support system to begin with, so he was kind of easy, but it was nice to have his validation. And that was always one of my favorite stories because that is around the time we'd go out and I liked that the kids started asking me, are you a pacemate? Which is, a member of the dance team. And I go, no, not a pacemate. And then it was like, are you Reggie's girlfriend? Are you Reggie's wife? I'm like, no. And so that was how, people saw women in sports. I was either the cheerleader, dancer, or I was his spouse. And then I remember the one day one of the kids asked me if I was his agent, and I knew women have finally made it in sports because this young person has said in elementary, it's like, are you Reggie's agent? And I was like, wow, they see a woman can be an agent. And so that was kind of cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
And you think of the hundreds of people that you've been able to work with and assist and kind of guide and mentor. Let's talk about some of those because you talked about the Pacer ABA days. Because thinking of the Mel Daniels, who I just he and I we used to sit at the NBA Summer League and have conversations. And man, every time I'd see him, he'd come up and shake my hand, and that big old hand of his would almost break my hand. But man, he loved his horses, and he had his.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that was big Mel to me. I didn't think of Mel the
Yep.
ABA star. Just Mel's just a
Right,
quality
right,
guy with that deep voice who just just
right.
loved being around and helping as well.
Right. Yeah, those ABA guys, when I first started working with the Pacers and promotions, we did some promotions. Mel was working actually in the front office, and he was an assistant coach with under George Irvin with Donnie. So we kind of met that way. But one of the first promotions that I did under Ray Compton, who was over marketing at that time, was starting to bring back the ABA guys, and we would do these games like ABA alumni versus NBA alumni, Pacers ABA versus Pacers NBA. We do Indiana college basketball alums versus Pacer alums. So that's how I got to meet them. And Mel would help me do that and actually introduced me to Roger Brown. And so the two of them became very close, like my big brothers. And that, gave me a ticket and acceptance. So, Darnell Hillman and Freddie Lewis and all
Wow.
of them, Slick and Boozy and Billy Keller. I
Yeah.
mean, all of those guys just embraced me. But they also showed me how, because when I started working with the Pacers, they were averaging like 1,000. I mean, it wasn't very many, 1,500 people or something. But I saw how the fans embraced them, and they take me out, and I'd see how people would come up to them and just reminisce, and they were just so engaging and so accessible. And I was like, oh, so this is how this works. So I started sharing that with the guys, and Donnie actually started bringing the ABA guys into camp every year and developing that relationship, bringing the ABA guys and the NBA Pacers together. And they just started sharing about, how do you build a championship team? And it starts with the relationships, and that team building. Um, but they also help the guys, the fans and the public get to know them better.
Right.
Um, it's like this is how you act when you're out in public. You can stop and shake a hand and say
That's
hello,
right.
and
That's
so that
right.
was really nice. Yeah.
Well, when the fans can have that connection and like you said, that accessibility to the players, then they kind of take ownership like hey, that's our guy. Or hey,
Right,
we got to
right,
see him at the school and he signed an autograph for me. And you get that sense of community there. And you were that
right.
bridge for a while, putting that sense of community there. So again, kudos to you for again seeing that and seeing the interactions and seeing just how valuable those relationships were.
Yeah, that was a big thing because that was one of the things I'd say I had little things that I wanted to see the guys do, like year 1 to 3. It's like we're just gonna just kind of get out here and help you figure out what it is where your interests are and where do you want to give back. We talk about how important giving back was, and so a lot of them didn't really have anything that they really were attached to. So it was like just kind of helping. Is anybody in your family suffered from anything, or are there any, something that they could relate to? And if they were blessed enough not to have had that, then it was just kind of connecting them. And as I learned about them and their personalities, well, you might like this or you might like this. And of course, they all liked kids. So it was always, you know, it was always good to put them in schools and with youth organizations. But that's what I did like the first couple of years, 3 years of their careers was just try to get them into different community organizations and introduce them to the different people in the communities that were heading up, whether it's politicians or CEOs or whatever, just so people would know them and get them involved. And they also learned how important it was, that networking and those connections, how important that could be for them later on.
I'm glad you said that because it truly is. If all they're doing is putting on a jersey with that name on the front and the back of the jersey and they're just in and out, they don't feel at home. And when they start to get community support and backing, I mean, you think about how powerful that is, Kathy, because now you're kind of helping them establish a brand. You're helping them
Right.
kind of get foundation set up to where, now their passions and their purposes and they can have a higher sense of value within those
Hmm.
communities. And
Right,
to me,
right.
it's such a powerful tool to help these young men navigate what they want to do with their likeness. Because I mean, now you hear of NCAA, name, image, and likeness, but it's the same
Right.
thing at the professional level to help them have
Absolutely.
that brand. And you were that person kind of guiding that ship and helping them discover, where their interest may have lied.
Oh, absolutely. We talked about that a lot. What do you want to do after? Because I just had seen so many guys who didn't know what they wanted to do when that career was over. And it's a very short career for the majority of them. Everybody's not Reggie Miller, everybody's not Michael Jordan. I mean, their careers seem to be a little bit longer now, but it's like 3 to 5 years was a good career.
Right.
Um, but they're only 25 years old or
That's
30
right.
years old. So it's like, now what do you want to do? And, I think people don't realize that they've devoted their entire life to this sport. This is how they got to that elite level.
Right.
So trying to get them to understand that some of those skills are transferable to other things and helping them develop interests. It's like you got to have. What do you do when you're not playing basketball? I don't. What are hobbies? What do you like? And just trying to help them figure that out and exposing them and bringing resource to them to help them. And that was that was one of the jokes when the NBA had started their player development. Mike Banham actually was over, and he had played for Indiana, um, but he. I was always on a soapbox about the league owed something to these players. It's like you got to have something for them to do after basketball is over, and I also had a big belief on the teams supporting things that they wanted to do. And so I remember one meeting, Mike Banham says, "Oh, we had the Larry Bird law. Now we have the KJ rule," and that's what.
Oh, that's great. Well, and again, you
Yeah,
think about it, that their careers are young and the players coming into the league nowadays are coming in younger and younger. So for
yeah.
them to have those support systems, yes, there's transitioning into the franchise and into the community, but then also transitions to help them, like you say, for post career, because to a lot of them, their time is structured being a player. And all of a sudden, when they're not playing anymore, or if they have an injury,
Hmm.
what are they going to do? I mean,
Yeah,
we see a lot of the guys that end up with chemical dependency issues because that's
right.
kind of their only escape. And
Coping.
then how can we put a support system or give them something
Hmm.
to pour their time and energy and efforts into to where they're going to still feel, a sense of purpose? Because when those playing days are done and the shoes, stop squeaking and the popcorn starts popping, I mean, it's like, oh, what am I going to do? So, I mean,
Right,
what a
right.
valuable transition piece there is. Because, I mean, there's, financial literacy and how to balance, a checkbook. Again, we're showing our age, but, debit cards and, what, when you're putting things on credit cards now, there's that interest. So, I mean, there's so
Hmm.
many pieces of life and life skills that need to be taught that you were able to help these guys with.
or at least, yeah, at least connect them to the resources, because I don't know it all myself. Like somebody want to teach me about investment, but
You and me both. Oh my
but
goodness.
at least connecting them to those resources wherever they need it, and I wish it was like 100%. Like I can say I helped every guy, but you have to you get them where they come, and you can only take them as far as they want to go. And a lot of times,
So
I tell
true.
the one thing I learned as a having an education background is the development of the brain. And it's like you're really an adolescent until you're like 26 years old, because that last thing to develop is that decision making part in the front of your brain.
So
And we
true.
wonder we wonder why not just professional athletes, but even everyday folks like us, we weren't making the best decisions at 25, 26 years old.
So
But for
true.
some reason we expect these professional athletes to be 50 in the way
Yeah.
that they think.
Well, it's
And
it's almost like an image thing, and there's a narrative like, "Oh my gosh, he's a professional basketball player. He's got it all together." But you know what? They're just
yeah,
human. Their egos are very fragile. Their confidence is very shaken at some point because maybe
mhm.
they're not being told they're the greatest anymore. And so, I mean, there's all these things to navigate that where,
Yeah, there's a
y-
lot of things. Yeah, you're
yes,
absolutely right. Yeah, especially coming in as a rookie and you're trying
ooh,
to, you've been the star, in college, and now you're sitting on the bench, maybe. And it's like, hey, you'll have your turn, but you got to pay your dues. You got to pay your
right.
dues.
And when you're
Everybody's not going to
immature,
come in.
and if you're immature and don't understand that process, to try to
Hmm.
teach someone to be patient who has been coddled for so long, when they have a little bit of entitlement, I mean, to kind of help them navigate through, hey, you're going to be just fine, give this some time, stick with the
Hmm.
process, which, the word is process now, but back then it wasn't. So helping these young men navigate through that had to be challenging there for you. Because again, I love what you said when you're like, you work with them where they're at. And that's a mistake many coaches miss because they have vision, and they're like, okay, I'm going to coach him to where I think where he needs to be, but they're not there yet. So,
They're not there, right?
wherever they're at, coach them where they're at. And like you, providing those supports to where
Mhm.
they're at. And because they don't know what they don't know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's probably a big challenge for coaches. It's understanding that these are individuals. You can't treat them all the same. They all don't learn the same. They all don't process information the same. They're all on different pages. And so, everybody always would ask me, well, what type of programs did you have? I was like, oh, I had a few, but mainly it was individual. It's whatever I could do individually to meet their needs.
Yeah,
Um,
see that's so good because a lot of people make that mistake and try to coach everybody the same way. And if you don't have that
mm,
relationship to know, that and have that interpersonal relationship and effectively communicate to help them, like you say, some kids are visual learners, some kids are motivated by fear, some kids, I mean, so again, all those
right.
little idiosyncrasies where we have to, take the time to learn these people. And I'm sure there were times you went to Donnie and you're like, okay, maybe if Larry spoke to him this way, maybe that would help. And then again, you're being an asset because guys, we just miss it because our egos are our amigos, and
Yeah.
we miss it.
Right. And so, and sometimes I did talk to Donnie about that. But more than that, it was talking to the players to help them understand too. It's like you're gonna have a little patience with this coach. Don't go off on the coach because you're gonna lose that battle.
Yep.
And things have changed. It's great to see now more players taking ownership of their careers. When I first started, it was, you just kind of did what you were told, but it's like as it evolved, it's like I don't want to say respect, but my son taught me that it's just because you're the coach or you're the teacher or whatever, you have to earn the respect. It's not automatically given anymore.
Amen. That's
Um,
why your son is so bright because his fingers on the pulse there, Kathy. So
Yeah, he
you've
he
taught
helped
him
me
well.
understand. Well, he taught me that. He taught me that because I was
Oh.
old fashioned. It's like, that's your coach. That's your, you know, you do what they say. And he's like,
Yeah,
I don't think
right.
so, but
Mom, you're
thank God they
missing it.
did.
He's not the
Yeah.
guy you think he is.
Yeah, right. They got to prove to me that that I can do that. So it's like, well, he's got a point there. So
I love it. Well, Kathy, let's have some fun here in this next, 10 minutes or so. Without, breaking any boundaries or anything, share some fun stories that maybe like where you was with Reggie at a commercial shoot and getting that tell people what it was like to coordinate and get, a player to that and then connecting them and then teaching them the scripts and then helping them get to the right place. So kind of shares a story like that, taking a player to a community function.
Well, yeah, it was. I had a lot of support, and my my philosophy was you never put the player in the role where they have to be the bad guy. So anytime our players went anywhere, I couldn't be with every player because we had multiple players going out at the same time. So depending upon where they were going and what they were doing, that's kind of how I decided who I was going to be with. But we had a great staff, front office staff. So there were people that I worked with and that was saying, I need you to go out with this guy to this appearance, and X, Y, I would just kind of set the parameters, just make sure this happens and da 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 da. But you develop codes and things with the guys. It's like, Reggie and I had that. Jermaine, it's like you have this look. So it's like, yeah, give me
This
the
ain't
look.
working. I don't like
Yeah,
this.
give me the look, give me the signal, and I know what to do at that point. But yeah, but I'm, like Jermaine was notorious for, I would say, no, we're not going to do any autographs. This isn't an autograph session. You're here to do this, that, and the other. And they've got all these people here, and that's going to slow the process down. And we're only here, and we only got this much time. And we go in, and I'd go, no autographs, no autographs. And he'd stop and sign autographs. And I'm like, Jermaine, no autographs. And then everybody's mad at me because I'm like taking them away and going, no autographs, no autographs. So that was always fun. But I did believe that they shouldn't be the bad guys. And sometimes I would just let them sign or whatever, because most of them wanted to do it. It wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never believed in them going anywhere by themselves. Someone always had to be with them, because I never wanted to put them in a position to have to say no to anyone or have to figure out, something, if something went wrong, somebody was there from our staff to do all of that. So,
Well,
I
just
mean,
like a good coach, you were in the same role because you're setting them up to be successful and make them
yes,
comfortable to make them enjoy the experience. Because if they go out and have a bad experience, they don't want to do it ever again. So I like
right,
how
right,
you had that attention to detail and looked out for them and took care of them. So
tried,
kudos to you. Um,
I tried.
oh, come on now. You're being humble. Uh, talk about. I mean, come on. You got to be with Dale and Antonio Davis, and you got to, Chuck Pearson. Do you have any great stories like for when they just came in and they're just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Where do I go? Do you have any stories where you've had to kind of help navigate? Because again, being a life coach was a big kind of a role for you.
Well, most of these guys that you're talking about, that 90s group, and before, had a pretty good because they were going to college. So they were getting 3 or 4 years of college. So they had a pretty good foundation. They had a pretty good support group. So a lot of times I was just an extension of that support group, and winning the confidence of an agent or a business manager. um, I was that person, that local person, that would be there. So it wasn't until, probably when again, when the guys got younger, when they were coming right out of high school, we had Jonathan Bender, and he had a great agent, but it's different when you're 17, 18 years old than when you're
Right.
21, 22. So it was just interesting because even working with those guys afterwards, I still work with some of them now, even that, their careers, they're retired, but not understanding because they went from high school to the pros, not understanding process. Um, and they would just like, look, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Or you never played the game. You don't
Yeah.
know. You never played the game before. It's like, okay, I'm talking to an 18-year-old who's telling me, who's like, probably 40 at this time, that I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's like,
I'm sure you wanted to
okay.
pick up a ball and go post them up right then, just be like, "Hey, listen."
Well, and that was, when you talk about Mel Daniels, he was always the one. He goes, you know more about basketball than people think you know. because I'll talk about it all the time. I wanted to be a scout, and he was trying to talk Donnie into letting me be a scout back in the day. And Donnie's like, I don't know how they'll receive you, but you do know what you're talking about. So,
I
um,
like that. I like that. As a matter of fact, I love that. Oh, that's awesome. What's one of your favorite memories being in your role and then having the successes that the Pacers have had in the past, where it's just like one of those things where if someone says, "Hey, share a story with us," that it comes to your mind immediately.
oh gosh,
And I'm sure there's hundreds of them.
there's so many. I guess it kind of just depends. You have to narrow it down. What do you want me to share a story about? I mean, I like, I always talk about Reggie when he decided he wanted to try broadcasting when he was thinking about what he wanted to do, and he thought he might want to do broadcasting, and so we did a talk show with him. He did a teen talk show called Teen Talk with Reggie Miller, and that was very successful. Had a lot of help because I didn't know anything about producing a TV show, so had a lot of help from a young lady, actually Sherma. She was Sherma Wise Thomas. She was sideline reporter for us and was working with one of the local PBS station. So she helped with that, and she helped not only me but Reggie, and kind of mentoring him on how to handle that mic and what to do, and as he hosted that show. And so it was nice to see him go from that to a sports show with the network station, because we were doing it on the cable station at the time. The FAA rules or FCA rules or whatever it was were saying you had to have free time that you donate to the community. So that's how we were able to do it. But he, parlayed that into working with one of the network stations here, and then parlayed into national. So that's
Yeah,
a
now
great
it's
story.
TNT, Reggie.
Yeah, yeah. So it's great to see how he's grown into that, and just knowing that was something he was interested in. Um, we've had guys. Dale Davis was one who had an interest in different things, and ended up making a movie. And independent, he became an independent filmmaker. Had a movie that he put out. Um, some of
That's
Ron
so
Artest was
awesome.
always, yeah, Ron Artest and his music.
Right? Yeah.
Just um, watching them parlay, learning how to parlay, take advantage of what the networking, because that's a lot. Some of them I may have introduced them, some of them I may not have. But one thing I did always talk about is like, yeah, got a network. Who do you know? You know somebody that's gonna, every rapper wants to be a ball player, and every ball player wants to be a rapper. So it's
Yeah.
like, you're in the same places with these people. Go up and talk to them. So it's been great to see guys just parlay their basketball careers into some of the things that they were interested in. And
I like it. Well, let's talk about, because I'm a big, underdog fan and people behind the scenes, and how roles in franchise are so important. Again, being a fan of yours, and when the New York Post would write a story on you, or the Indy Star, your timeline is filled up with interns who were reaching out to you and thanking you, and you gave them their first shot. Share some of those names and some of those people who you now see being successful, that were under your wing and within your department at a young age.
people that I could reach out and go, can you give me a job now? Oh gosh, I just saw where one of our interns, Marcy Herzog, was at the University of Arizona, and she was just uh, promoted to vice president of community something or other with a big company there in Arizona. So that was nice to see. One
Wow.
now probably the biggest success as far as internships is a young lady who, gosh, she is Kendra Bracken Ferguson. She did an internship with me when I was vice president of communications, and she went on to work with, I think it's a big New York agency, and started their social media, because that was right up in,
Wow.
and built that for them, and then went on to work with a lot of huge brand names. And now she has her own her own company, and that's what she works with a lot of celebrities, and she's kind of focused on the beauty industry because the fashion industry. But she's developed a partnership with CAA, and so she's
Wow.
awesome. She's awesome, and she's
That's
funny.
cool.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of them out. Jonathan was my intern, and now he was a executive with lids hats, and um, kind of serves on the Pacer stat crew still. So I mean, there's a lot of interns that we've had through the years. Some of them are working in the Pacers Pacers organization now. Quite a few of them have gone on to start their own businesses. So
Wow. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
and,
that's been
and even as you finished up with the Pacers, I mean, a quarter of a century. I mean, you got your Kathy Jordan Consulting. Talk a little bit about that.
yeah. I was trying to figure out what to do after leaving the Pacers. It's like I couldn't. I was trying to get in with another team because I really liked working with the athletes. Um, but at that time, it was pretty much established in the NBA. Every team at that point had someone. NFL, it was like that whole athlete development was pretty established. So there weren't really any openings at the time. Donnie brought me in to do some consulting a little bit with the Knicks when he went there, and I was hoping to be able to parlay that into more. And so I started consulting. And basically just took everything I did with the Pacers for 25 years and developed a business. So it's a little bit of everything. I work with guys. I've helped some of the players after retirement with, Jonathan had an invention that he had. So I kind of helped him at the beginning of that with his apparatus that he is now marketing. Um, I had Haywood Workman wanted to become a referee, got him into the referee program. So he was a ref for the NBA for many
Yep.
years. So just have kind of continued to do the same thing, just on my own brand. I've gone in. I was asked by Hilliard Solutions to be a part of her team. We went and did life skill development for NCAA basketball academy once right before the pandemic. We were hoping we'd be able to do it again, but then we had the pandemic, so they didn't do it. So hopefully we'll have that opportunity again. So yeah, I've
Fantastic.
been able
Wow.
to take the same thing and just do it individually with people. I represent some authors now. Some people with startups. I help them start up new businesses. Not always sports, but yeah, it's been worked a little.
Good
I
for
helped on some
you.
films. Yeah,
Yeah.
been
Oh, that's
yeah,
so neat. I just think it's fascinating because again, those relationships that you've built, I mean, when you get down to it, that's what it's all about. You can't put a price tag on what we do or how we do it, but your heart of gold being, in that community, I mean, has been wonderful. And, thinking about, females and women empowerment, what would you say to a 20-year-old Kathy Jordan out there who wants to get into the sport industry? What would be your biggest message to that young gal who wants to be the next Kathy Jordan?
ooh, that's a good question. I guess I would say the sports industry is so vast. So really take a look at it and figure out exactly what you want to do. Because so many people will say, "I want to work in sports." It's like, what exactly do you want to do?
Yeah, yeah,
There's so many opportunities. So really take a look at it and understand what your own personal values are. Understand what type of culture you want to work in, what kind of boss, what is the management style that you flourish under best, and do you need somebody that's hands-on? Do you do better? Donnie was not a micromanager. He was one who gave you direction and supported you in what you wanted to do, and there was no fear of losing your job, being fired if you made a mistake. But and I flourished under that. He's somebody who recognized probably stuff in me that I didn't even know existed in me. He gave me so many things to do and entrusted so much of the organization with me, and which I didn't really realize until afterwards.
yeah. But I mean, it's like, you know what?
Yeah,
You hire great people and get out of the way and let them do their job. And that's
yeah,
exactly what you were able to do. And Man, the community, it has flourished because of it. The relationships that you have, the franchise, the organization. I mean, there's so many people that are very fortunate and are better people because of a Kathy Jordan.
Well, thank you very much. I hope so. You know, that's who I am. I just like giving back. That's one thing Donnie always says, you don't monetize what you do. And it's like I don't think in those terms. What what excites me is helping someone and watching them succeed. You know,
Oh, I love it.
if I can help them succeed, that's my pay.
Oh, see, ladies and gentlemen, this is Kathy Jordan, and we're just chopping it up here on the Coach Scott Field Show. I hope that people will share this content and empower and inspire other women out there who are interested. And you don't even have to be a female, because if this gal here doesn't touch you with her servant heart and her Midas
Mm,
touch, because everything she touches, she leaves it far better than what she found it. So, Kathy, thank you so much for blessing us. Thank you for your time. Thank the world of you. I'm always here. If you ever
thank
need anything, please holler
you.
at me. But this has been wonderful, and I hope people share this content to inspire, empower, and enrich others. Because again, you're truly golden, my friend.
Thanks so much, Coach. I really appreciate that. A lot of people are, you know, you can't do anything by yourself. Had a lot of
Amen.
support. I've had a lot of great guys. You know, I said 25 years. I not one player on those 25 years of teams ever gave me any issues. Um, Always great men that I worked with.
Well,
So
you earned their respect and they saw what you brought. So thank gosh that they didn't disrespect you, because I'm sure Mama Bear would have had to
never.
come out and get a little nasty.
You know, I always say, you know, you set your own value, you know. So, you know, when people ask the question that you asked about young women today, it's like realize you establish your value and how people treat you. It's all in how you act and what you accept. People only will do what you allow them to do.
Yeah,
So
what you don't correct, you accept. So
that's
I
right.
love that. So hey, thank you for being who you are. It's been wonderful to have you on the show. And again, I'm a better person just by knowing you and having you come on and share your stories.
Thank you. Appreciate
Got
that.
it.
Thank you very much.
Oh, this is awesome.